Hello, and welcome to the Simplify Your Retirement Podcast with Stephen Strickland. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Paul. How's it going?
Going very well. Excited to be here today.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a fun, exciting season here. In this season, I know that we're taking a path a little bit different than normal.
Yeah.
You know, we generally have retirement planning topics, all of that. And some of this season is that, but this season's always has kind of had a focus of non-traditional. Right. So whether they're non-traditional products or just non-traditional topics, but things that are still important. So things that we feel are important for our clients to understand or just
adds value.
Yeah. So we want to be able to bring some of that.
I know you and I can talk about 3 bucket approaches, and we can talk about Roth IRAs, all these things all day long, and a lot of talk about that and a lot of great episodes. But this one is more kind of outside the box of the normal financial planning stuff. So I'm glad we've had the season to talk through some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're going to come back to the real bread and butter later.
Exactly. Well, and this episode is really exciting because in a sense, it keys off of what we normally do. Yeah. So when we're talking about things, when I look ahead, I know that there's kind of 8 areas that we're going to discuss. So as we dive into this, we might have to break it up into 2 parts. It depends on how long the conversation goes here. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of dive into these 8 parts. But the first part is kind of what we normally deal with. Yeah. Right. It's expanded on that a little bit, but then everything else comes off of that. And so as I was thinking about this episode and getting ready for it, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, what's always interesting is if you ask someone, like, who are you? Yeah. And the way a lot of people normally answer is by giving you their job description. Right. And so for a lot of us, that's what our identity is tied to, our job. Right. Or our function or what we do day in and day out. And so as we close in on retirement, what happens when that identity that we hang our hat on is gone? Yeah. So how do we make that transition? And so I know our guest today that you brought on, we've had in the studio before, and so we're excited to have back today. But I'll let you introduce our guest and dive into this great conversation
Looking forward to it. Well, today we have Samantha Tiller back with us. Samantha, thanks for joining us again on the podcast.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Great. Samantha is the owner and founder of Lumina Coaching. Lumina was launched in May of 2016. So now for 8 years. And she has supported dozens of people to make wise decisions, like Paul was just saying, during times of change. Who are you? What do you do? That's kind of the question everyone asks. What happens when you're not doing anything? You're in retirement. She's a life transition coach, a certified coach passionate about helping men and women approach big life changes confidently. She lives outside of Kansas City with her husband and 2 daughters.
2 daughters now.
Yeah, congratulations. Just a few weeks old now.
Yeah,
thank you. And thanks for being here. As Paul mentioned, Samantha is one of these people we've had on the podcast more than once. And that's a good thing. Okay.
I'm honored.
Yeah, absolutely. So in other words, we've had great guests on our podcast. Yeah. We'd love to have all of them back. But I think what you do and the topic that you talk about, the area of expertise that you have is important to our clients. It's so important that not only is this the second time I've invited you on a guest on our podcast, I also had you come out and speak to one of our large client events here recently during our summer education series. Yep. And Paul, I know that people, if they want to get a copy of that, because we recorded that episode possibly. I don't know if we did that one or not.
I think we ran into some audio issues there.
No.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. All right, so hopefully you had to be there to hear it. That's why it's so important to never miss. Yes. If you're alive or in Kansas City, never miss one of our summer education series. So Samantha came out and spoke to our clients about the topic we're going to talk about today. So again, Samantha, thank you for being with us. I'm excited to talk about your program. I know you do a lot of group coaching and helping people find a really meaning and purpose after they retire. And I like what your website says. It talks about, not having an aimless retirement. So, what is something that you see when you're meeting with people? What's the first kind of thoughts that people go through or experience after they retire?
Yeah, great question. I think they're terrified to be aimless. They're terrified to kind of retire to the couch. And that makes sense. So looking at purpose and meaning in retirement is a huge thing. And I love how that question of who am I, one of the things that I'll often bring up to people is okay, it's not only what do I want to do? Yes, we need to fill our days with meaningful actions and what are your hands going to do, but who do I want to be? And that's where I think this type of coaching can really help start to unlock some of those deeper questions. And it's a real privilege to partner with people around identity. Like what is more core and, spiritual and personal than identity?
Finding out who you are, what you're made to do, and that life doesn't end just because you're retired.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know your website is lumina-coaching.com. And on there it also says retiring to the couch sounds like a bore. Instead, make it your best season yet.
Yes.
So I find that concept very interesting. Make it your best season yet. Most people, I think, maybe ideally think, hey, when I retire, that's going to be my best season yet because I've got, no work and I've got no 9 to 5. But for a lot of people, it's not their best season. Why is that?
Intentionality.
Okay.
Did you plan and prepare for it? For our workplaces, there was probably preparation out of high school, maybe preparation out of, higher education. There were steps that led to this being successful. And then we just sort of turn a corner and we're retired. Well, how do we prepare for that season? And that's really when I come in. And I would say as a transition coach, trying to help people ahead of time is ideal, so because it's often we feel like the most discomfort when we're anticipating it. So 2 years out of retirement, maybe even 5 years out of retirement, all of a sudden it's 3 months away from retirement. And they're like, whoa, there's some big feelings. I'm not really sure I'm feeling prepared for this.
Right.
That's when it's really great to partner with a coach. Now we can do it on the back end as well, because you always have time to reinvent and recreate and, make a change. But I think we can all think of a transition that the anticipation was almost worse than the actual change.
Right. So when people retire, what has your experience been when after someone retires? What's like the honeymoon phase? What's the phase where people are like, hey, for 2 or 3 months, this is great. But then when do they does it hit them like, wait a minute, there's a long life ahead of me. I just did 6 months of golf, cruises, travel. Like now what do I do next?
I think there's a few maybe like patterns you could say, and 6 months is probably a good, maybe 4 to 6 months is like, let me just chill out, I often will tell people like, if you're on the doorstep of retirement, like you're retiring next week, let's not work together yet because it's really exciting. You've got things on your mind, so let's try to hit, I don't know, even 4 to 12 plus months prior or 4 to 6 months post.
Yes.
So that you've got some bandwidth to really think about it. I think one of the core things that drives me as a coach is this like simple formula: awareness plus choice equals peace. And I think a lot of us want peace. And they might not use that word exactly: contentment, fulfillment, calm. But this idea of peace, like this inner calm.
Absolutely.
And so awareness, what is even going on in my life? What's working? What's not working? What's changing? What's staying the same? Now, what's my choice in it? Where do I have autonomy and agency to make a healthy choice? And then that's going to lead to more peace.
Well, believe it. We're all about peace. Even from a financial perspective, our whole thing is financial peace comes from having a plan. So like you're saying, being aware, making the right choices leads to peace of mind. So we're totally aligned with that 100%. I could see from a retirement perspective, I think most people in general, most clients, they're focused pre-retirement on financial wellness, which we'll talk about in just a minute, being financially prepared, but being prepared for the other things. It's almost like that's in the back burner because they're so looking forward to this day. They've been planning for this day for a long period of time, the day they can make work optional, they can walk out of the job, and they think it's going to be, maybe they have a perception of what retirement is going to be like. But then I do think reality sets in, not too much longer after that. So I do think for a lot of people, I think it's just human nature to say, well, I'm going to prepare financially only, not for these other areas. And they wait till after. But still, even after, it's not too late.
Right. And I think the conversation is changing bit by bit. And I really applaud advisors such as yourself who are helping this become a bigger part of the conversation, because you guys care about your clients' wellness more than just their finances. And that matters because, yes, there's that question of, can I make work optional?
Right.
But then there's a question of all those other pieces of what makes up their life, because we know that money is not the be all end all, right? Money is the vehicle, or however you guys might describe it.
Yep. There's a lot of reasons why we align with Samantha. It's because of these things, what she believes in, what she says, and we believe the same thing. We have our mission. We have it down into one hashtag, GSEL, which stands for give, serve, and enjoy life. So give, serve, enjoy life. That's what we want people to be free to do. So where you come into play with what you do and your experience in coaching is helping people to actually enjoy life in retirement. And so that's why I believe it's so important.
Enjoy it in retirement and enjoy the process. I mean, the reason I became a coach is because I was at this really big indecision point, and it really felt crappy, right? It doesn't feel good to be in like a place of indecision, waffling on that fence, whatever it might be for that particular situation. And that is also life, right? It's not like we get to this sunny age or this sunny, like, okay, now I'm no longer working, or now I had the baby or whatever. The process is also the life. And so I love helping people also enjoy the process of figuring it out, where it doesn't have to be isolating. It doesn't have to be lonely. It doesn't have to be scary.
Right. Exactly. And then you help people, maybe someone was the lead nurse. In other words, you talk about identity. This person was the lead nurse. Now they're what? This person was the director. This person was the manager. This person, right, exactly. So helping people get from this thing where they had a title, where they had a role, they had a responsibility, to where who are they now?
That along with structure. So not only did they have people that needed them and they felt a sense of service just innately in all of their days, but what's the structure that was built into that? For some people, for many, many years. Now, there are jobs that don't have as much structure. If somebody is an entrepreneur or something different and they're used to making their schedule every day, there's an argument that they might have a little bit of a smoother time transitioning to retirement because they're used to building their day.
Right.
But many jobs out there are not like that. And that built-in structure is a key thing that we often talk about with clients.
Yeah. So, really this episode is more about the enjoy life aspect. So when we tell our clients, we tell them, look, we want you to be free to give, serve, and enjoy life. Our role is to help people get there financially to be able to do those things. And so what we tell our clients is, look, we want you to do these things, but we're also going to create opportunities for you to do this. We're going to create a giving project. We're going to have a service project. We're going to try to do things to help us enjoy life activities, but you need to do this on your own. And where I see what you do in this Retire Wellthy framework is helping people not just do activities. So a lot of times when I'm thinking about enjoying life, I'm thinking you need to travel, you need to golf, you need to, you know what I mean? But you're saying if you really want to enjoy life, you need to be well in a lot of areas, not just in, let's say, entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Those things can help for sure. And they plug into community, which is one of the key things that I'm sure we'll talk about. But if that's a bit more outer in, and I'd say the Retire Wellthy framework. So WELLTHY, because we're looking at wellness from the inside out, looking at these different dimensions and saying what again, what works for me, what doesn't.
I love that. Retire Wellthy. Make sure people know that it's WELL. Retire Wellthy. That's awesome. And so I know I want to get into this because this will be 3 episodes. If we don't make this, so I know you have 8 areas of a Retire Wellthy framework. And I know we'll tell everybody later, I know you do group coaching around these 8 areas. And so I'll mention what they are, and we'll kind of just talk about each one of them, what's important about each one. There's financial wellness, occupational wellness, social wellness, emotional, environmental, intellectual, spiritual, and physical. Those are the 8 areas where I guess you would say if someone has a plan, if someone has made choices in these areas, then you can kind of go confidently into enjoying your retirement years.
Yeah. I feel strongly that if there's awareness around these, now we're not trying to get all of them to like a perfect 10. This isn't about like a perfection balance. But sometimes there's a dimension that hasn't been thought about in a while, or there's a dimension that the person has thought about and they realize that one's really lacking right now, but what do I do about it? Oftentimes when we're in the valley, it's hard to see options to be creative to get out. And so, really looking at these 8, and I want to make sure I mention, these are not something I made up. This is from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They lay out these dimensions. You can find more about the dimensions on their website as well. And for everybody to say, that mental health matters, that we all need to be thinking holistically about our lives. And that's what
do people in retirement struggle with mental health?
Yeah. And I think the mental health one really goes into the emotional health. That, it's very nuanced there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But if you're feeling, let's say, low emotionally, that could be described as, I'm struggling with mental health.
Okay. This is good. So awareness plus choice
equals peace.
Equals peace of mind. So what we're going to try to do today is bring awareness to these areas.
Absolutely.
And then people have a choice to make. Like you're saying, some people may be fine. If there's 8 areas, they may feel like, hey, I'm really doing good in these 3, but I kind of need help in these other 5. So we'll just introduce what these are. The first one is financial wellness.
Yeah.
You came to the right place.
About that.
Absolutely. So we'll just listen to the other 60 episodes we've got. No, just what would you say about financial wellness?
Bringing a bit of the emotional component into it, which maybe you guys do in your appointments already. But one of the things that I've seen again and again in clients at this transition is going from I've been saving all my life to now you're telling me to spend it. And that can bring up some tricky emotions for people. So again, just bringing awareness to that. Let's slow it down a little bit. Let's talk about it more than just touching on it as a topic that needs to be thought about. So my framework, the group coaching, we go through a series of questions just to bring awareness to that. Well, what comes up to you when you think of save or spender? Anything come up for you, Paul?
Yeah, Paul, what do we tell people about financial wellness? It'd be the freedom to be able to spend their money.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I do know that's one of the biggest areas that people struggle in. Yeah. I mean, that's the difference is they've been saving. And now just like when they walk out the door, their whole life has changed. You're also now telling them on top of all those changes, you need to stop spending, stop saving, and start spending. And people just can't do that.
It could be too many, flips switched at once. And again, what's the emotional reaction? So I want to talk about emotions for just a second because it's very like a two-way street. Our actions influence our emotions, but our emotions influence our actions. So you could think about, the classic example of someone cuts you off, while driving, you feel an emotional reaction and you make a decision to react a certain way. I don't know why she looked at me, but I don't know.
If you driven, we drive in the same
You give them a very calm way. Hi, have a great day. But on the flip side, our actions influence our emotions. So if I decide to get up and do, 5 minutes of stretching and put on a pleasant song, guess what? I might be feeling a little bit more bubbly. I might spontaneously, hug my daughter or whatever, so it's a two-way street. And that's part of like the empowerment of coaching like this is to say, let's slow it down, see what's actually going on so that you can better influence your actions. And if you're having an emotional reaction, emotional experience to save or spender, or sometimes people have a very heavy emotional reaction to what the people before them did. So what did your parents do in retirement? What are your siblings doing currently? Have you seen anyone do this in a healthy way? And if the answer is no, it's very likely they've got some emotions tied to that's impacting their actions.
Absolutely.
Do you find that it can be different between a husband and wife too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I mean that's the thing I've seen too. So some people are savers their whole life, but that's because one is driving it. And then the other one is looking forward to retirement because they're the spender. And so is that part of the group coaching process, walking through that too, to start the dialogue even as a couple to say, how do we emotionally handle this?
Interesting to see how deep we'll go with that, but absolutely starting the dialogue and again, making sure they're aware of it and how that's going to shift. And sometimes it's even kind of giving permission slips to say, hey, you don't have a problem spending. So actually, will you go ahead and book that trip? Because I have trouble putting that on the card, or whatever. I know we have it, but it's not fun for me to do. So I'm going to let you handle that. And sometimes just giving that permission and kind of playing to your strengths instead of making it a battle. Like you don't have to force it.
Absolutely. And that's where, planning comes into place. And so that's a lot of part of our job here is to tell people, look, this is what's available to spend. You can spend all of this. You're not going to run out of money. You have a plan for this. It's okay. You don't have to feel guilty spending this. We have 3 buckets, where there's, you have the ability to take withdrawals from some, and some you're going to have a guaranteed lifetime income. And so from the financial wellness standpoint, certainly we would just tell people, give us a call here at wisewellth.com. We do what you're saying. That is, it's not not just, there's a difference between advice and planning. We do planning, and the planning is based on someone's income needs, goals, dreams, all those things, and making sure they have the ability to be free. In other words, most people, even in retirement, when it comes to financial wellness, and I understand why this is one of your core things, is because a lot of people still spend their whole retirement, being worried about their finances. Yeah. And so where our role comes in these areas is to tell people, look, if you have a plan, if you're only taking a risk with what you can afford to take a risk with, you're not taking a risk with what you should not take a risk with, you can actually then go out and do these other things. Yeah. Giving, serving.
We can always find something to worry about. Right. Exactly.
But
if you do want this to be your best season yet, this is something you've been looking forward to, and there's a whole bunch of different things even about the aging, that comes with this season. But one of the things I have in this chapter as well is who is on your financial team. Mm-hmm. And, just identify the people that you feel really supported by. And if there's a gap, let's find someone that you trust, maybe Wise Wealth, to fill that gap, and get your questions answered and feel really good about it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So there's financial wellness. Another one is occupational wellness. And this is interesting because as someone, our definition of retirement is making work optional. It's just getting to a place where financially you don't have to keep working for a paycheck. You can, but you don't have to. And so someone, it's optional, but they have these skills. They either, can't work anymore, or they want to stop working. So what do you mean by occupational wellness when they don't have a job per se where they're getting paid to do it?
Yeah, so this is where the service comes in, I would say. So it could be service through volunteer, service through paid, whatever suits them. But those skills in action, I would say, is kind of a simple way to describe this dimension. And I strategically put it second because this is definitely on people's mind that they think they're leaving. But it's like, no. You're still taking your whole self with you. You're still taking these skills and strengths with you.
Yes.
Where are we transferring them? And you might be transferring them to your grandkids if that's your choice. That's a great, or somewhere else, kind of within your immediate family or a smaller group. You don't have to necessarily transfer them to another job or, whatever it might be. But I think people can be surprised by that dip and maybe not enjoying their retirement if they haven't thought about where am I transferring my skills. Because that's part of the identity. And we feel really good when we're putting our strengths into action. Yep.
So there's two things I want to say about that. One is you mentioned this is the second thing. So is this Retire Wellthy framework, these 8 areas, kind of like in order? Technically, is this the way you kind of want people?
Them in order, yes.
This is the order you think people should go in. Focus financial wellness first, occupational wellness second.
Yes, and financial was definitely first because people are often not ready to talk to me until they feel peace
they know they can do it. Exactly. Gotcha.
It's kind of that is just, it can be a big cloud, and until they've got some clarity there.
Yep. So
they might not be ready for the other dimensions.
I gotcha. Yeah. So occupational wellness. So someone has a job, they have a career, they obviously have skills, they have experience. And so your role, I guess, is in helping people identify, not that you were a manager over 40 people, but
let's take the title away a little bit.
Exactly. What is it that you're good at?
Yeah.
And how can
what are you
use
good
that
at, and what do you like kind of illuminating throughout your day? Because people do, let's say you do 100 things a day in a work day. They might only like 40 of them. You might only feel really lit up with. So let's really look at expanding those forward. Yeah. And one of the just practical tools I use for this is the Strengths Finder assessment. Yeah. A lot of people are familiar with that, the Gallup Strengths. Yeah. I don't do a lot of assessments in my coaching, but that one consistently has been a really, really helpful, particularly for the transition of retirement.
I agree with that totally. Yeah. Find out what lights you up, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and figure out then from there, how can you channel that? Is it in your grandkids? Is it in a
board of directors?
Yes, exactly.
And partly, some people do want to go to more paid work. They're like, hey, I want to work part-time, or I want to work in a different industry. And there can be a lot of lack of confidence around building a resume. If they're like, well, I was in the same job for 30 years. Now, how do I do that? Yeah. So even something like the Strengths Finder can give them a language to say, oh, strategic is one of my top strengths. Now, how do I play with that when I talk about myself for this next?
Relatable to something else. Okay. Good. Yeah. Awesome. So financial wellness, and then we have occupational, figuring out what to do next with your experience, with what you're good at, strengths finders, those kinds of things. And then there is social wellness.
Yeah.
So people go into work, you work for 30 years, 40 years, kind of not only your identity as a person is the title that you've got, your kind of social network. You spend 8 hours a day or more with these people.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden people retire and they find out they don't know anybody anymore. They don't have friends, or what's kind of like the framework. Yeah,
they don't know
there.
how these friendships shift and what to do about it.
Yeah.
I think we had such an interesting, terrible experiment with COVID of what social wellness meant to us, and knowing that the little things of even just saying hello to Brooke on my way in, that's a social connection that's going to buoy my day, right? Or going to buy a coffee and saying thank you to the barista. Yeah. So if you suddenly shift your entire environment of where you're going 5 days a week or whatever your work structure is, then who are the people that also get cut out? Yeah. And we need to think about not replacing every single one, but we need to make sure that it's suddenly not going, dramatically different in our social experiences.
Okay. And it's not necessarily, you're withdrawing from a 9 to 5, you're withdrawing from, but not withdrawing from society.
Right.
Don't stay home. Yeah. And kind of get inclusive, continue, get the coffee, talk to people, interact with people.
That's a very powerful word you just use, withdraw, because people might not even recognize it as withdrawal because they're like, oh, I'm just chilling, or I don't have anywhere to go right now. Okay, well, let's count the last week. How many people have you talked to? Might not be that many. So that's where that preparation ahead of time really comes into play here. So if we can catch this, then they can say, you know what? It might be silly, but I'm going to go sign up for that bunko group because I know I'll have something on Tuesday nights to look forward to. Right. And I'm going to go ahead and even though I don't know if I'm going to like it, maybe I will sign up for that, Meals on Wheels or whatever. Just doing the things that add some frequency and consistency can be so powerful for building in that social wellness.
I believe it. And really, like you said earlier, just the word intentionality, saying, you know what, I'm not interacting with people as much as I used to. I'm going to, in essence, force myself to do it, be intentional about it. I'm going to sign up for these things. And I think of also in this context, the idea of, being uncomfortable. Yeah. In other words, some people, by the nature of their role, their position, who they were, they kind of had people that were, So it's almost like a humility thing. You have to humble yourself. And all of a sudden, before, people had to talk to you, whether they wanted to or not, maybe. But now all of a sudden, you're going to go sign up for bunko. You're going to sign up to go to this church function. You're going to do these things, even though it seems like that's below you or whatever the case may be. But it's important to do it. I guess be humble, get uncomfortable.
Yeah. And you might need to seek out, is what I'm hearing in that. You might need to seek out relationships that have fallen away or build brand new ones. And even knowing that, so another piece of this is who do I want to have meaningful relationships with? So maybe because of your work, you haven't been able to be as close with a son or daughter. And now you want to, okay, how do I take intentional action? Do I bring them dinner once a week? Do I, whatever. The thing that is so exciting about this is there is no one roadmap. Yeah. There are a million ways, right, to experience a really great retirement.
And like you said, finding out people's strengths in the occupational wellness side, it's finding out what you enjoy doing. So for my parents, Paul, in retirement, you're going to like this because this relates to you. They're really into games. So they've had more game nights, since they retired with friends. And I know, Paul, that's something that you're probably looking forward to. Paul's absolutely a gamer. Yeah. He can teach people some really interesting games. So I can picture Paul in retirement. Yeah. Strategy games. Yeah. It never changes. So
hosting a game night every Tuesday, Thursday.
Absolutely. Strategy is one of my strengths.
So then you get to use it. Yes. And that is really a great example too, because it's not that we have to always use our strengths in a workplace, right? You can use it for fun.
Right. Exactly.
But don't let it stagnate or you're going to notice.
Other people don't think it's fun when I
right. Winning doesn't get noticed.
Well, you probably heard me say it both at the summer series and on the first podcast, but social wellness really is one that we want to highlight, underline, star, because it is the biggest predictor of longevity. Absolutely. So research, and I think it's Susan Pinker's research, she found that the longest predictor, or the best predictor of how long you will live, is the quality of your close relationships. So if you have a spouse or immediate family, think about the quality of those, but also the number of people you talk to in a day.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's an astounding comment right there.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's amazing. And I know. So I think about when my wife and I first had kids, and we were thinking that nothing's going to change for us, right? Because we're going to be those
we'll take
people.
Our kids with us. We'll do the things.
But then over time, our friendships naturally changed.
Yeah.
And we were sharing life with people who had kids, and the people who didn't have kids were just less part of our life.
Yeah.
But because we didn't really fully understand it, and I've seen this with some of the people who retire that I talk to, is there's a sense of loss that comes in because they didn't address this up front. So that's what I love about the intentionality is there's a sense of loss because I look at all these friendships or these relationships that I've lost. And so now I wallow in loss rather than planning and enjoying the new relationships and choosing the relationships I want.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think there's a healthy tension between what you're leaving and what you're moving towards, but being able to keep your eyes on both and kind of give the honor and the respect to both that's needed. Because if we are so honed in on what I'm leaving, that's going to bring a certain amount of feelings, right? But if we're so gung-ho on what I'm going to, and we're not kind of respectfully honoring the loss, that can be a little tricky as well. Yeah, that's a really
I like
point.
this, the social wellness aspect that, I think, again, extremely profound what you said, that the prediction or the predication of longevity in life is this social network. Being friends, certainly if you're married, you've got a spouse, but then other connections, other people, staying actively engaged socially. I never forgot, we had Mitch Anthony, he's a guy who speaks on retirement wellness around the country. And he said, that the fountain of youth is curiosity. I've never forgotten it. And so it's like, stay curious, stay active. It may be uncomfortable to say, I shouldn't have to try hard to, develop friendships because everyone used to answer, but just do it. Take the humility, take the discomfort and do it because it's a predictor of longevity. And we focus on making sure people have predictable income, which is another thing that says people live longer and they have that security too. And so
interesting.
It's very interesting. It is a literally scientific study that says the people that have sources of guaranteed income tend to live longer. It's very interesting because it's one less thing they're ever have to worry about running out of money in retirement. So it's huge. And I love the social aspects of that too. So Paul, I think it's probably a good time for us to stop. I know we only got through 3 of these and this will help people. Stay tuned. We'll do another episode here and just the next episode we'll cover the last 5. We'll be able to jump right into those 5, but we'll stop here for this first one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the best things to think about in the midst of all this and what I love about what you do and how this ties into what we do too is, we always talk about how financial peace comes from having a plan. And that's really focused on the first segment here. But then I would say, let's just take that a step further to items 2 through 8 is really just having a plan leads to peace. And so I know you talk about peace as well. And that's it. It's the intentionality aspect of it. And so if you're watching this or listening to this and you don't have that peace that comes from having a financial plan, then you need to give us a call here at Wise Wealth. Give us a call at 816-246-9473. That's 816-246-WISE. Or email us at info@wisewealth.com. We'd love to start that conversation with you and help you put together a plan, intentionality around your finances so that you can have peace.
And one thing, sorry, I want to jump in and mention this because I know we talked before, just before we do our closing, they can call us, they can come to wisewealth.com, but also you have group coaching sessions.
And
so
2025, we'll have some cohorts going.
And they tend to go 8 to 9 weeks.
Yeah. So they're 9-week coaching sessions with going through the 8 chapters and then a wrap-up week.
And what's the website?
Lumina, LUMINA-coaching.com. And you can sign up for an inquiry call, see if it's a good fit for you and when the time is right.
And we'll put it on and we'll upload it on the
we'll have it in the show notes for you to be able to click on there. And so, and that was what I was going to say is definitely if you want a plan to have peace in retirement for all the other aspects too, definitely reach out to you. It's needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a great topic. And so look forward to making sure that you click like and subscribe so that when the next episode where we cover sections 4 through 8 of this framework comes out, you'll be able to do that. It also makes it easier to share episodes like this with family and friends, because this is going to be an important episode to share with someone that you care about. And so, as always, thank you, Stephen, for bringing on great guests. Thank you, Samantha. Always enjoy having you in the studio here. And thank you to you, our listening and viewing audience. You're the reason we do this. Without you, we wouldn't be here. Again, this is Paul from Wise Wealth, reminding you that financial peace does come with having a plan. And we'll see you next time.